Mom, Kevin. One day when I returned home from school, my mom and brother Kevin, who were supposed to be at home, were nowhere to be found. Evening came and they had not returned, nor had my dad come back from his office. I touched the handle of the refrigerator and hesitated for a moment. Normally, I wouldn't even go near the fridge as my mom would scold me for wasting electricity. My stomach growled loudly, and unable to bear the hunger any longer, I opened the door. Inside, there were only condiments like ketchup and mayonnaise. Desperate to satisfy my hunger, I took out the ketchup and sucked on the tube, but the sourness and sweet salty taste made me cough. I put my mouth directly under the faucet and poured tap water into my body. It didn't feel like it was filling my stomach at all. Just then, I heard a noise from the entrance. Thinking that my mom and everyone had come back, I rushed to the entrance, but it was my grandma who stood there.
Sherry, weren't you supposed to be in England?
Both my grandma and I were surprised and looked at each other.
Your dad, Mom, and Kevin just left for England. I thought you went with them.
The expression on my grandma's face was not only one of surprise, but also mixed with sadness and anger.
This is terrible.
With a resolved nod, my grandma said,
Sherry, from today, let's live at my house.
She smiled kindly and gave me a piggyback ride. Her back was broad and very warm. My name is Sherry Hansen, and I'm in my 20s. I currently live with my grandma, who has weak legs. Going up and down the apartment elevator is hard, but I have never thought of taking care of my grandma as a burden. On the contrary, I feel a debt of gratitude to my grandma that I can never fully repay. If it weren't for my grandma, I would be... My family environment has been complicated since I was young. I was bad at learning words, and even when I became a grade school student, my reading and writing were slower than other kids, not only in language studies, but also in other subjects. My grades were among the lowest. Both of my parents graduated from prestigious universities, and it seemed they resented me for not being academically inclined.
Do Mom and Dad hate me?
As I muttered to myself, not understanding why my parents hated me, I often fell asleep at night crying. I have an older brother named Kevin, who was 5 years my senior. Unlike me, Kevin had been quick to learn from a young age and always achieved top results in school tests. In school and around the neighborhood, he was called a prodigy, and for my parents, Kevin was a source of pride. My mom always compared me with Kevin and sighed, saying,
Because of you, the whole family feels embarrassed. Please don't go outside more than necessary.
And with that blunt way of speaking, she clearly showed her displeasure. I'm sorry, Mom. That was all I could do, always apologize. As the day of the test approached, my mom would always say,
You'll disturb Kevin,
and kick me out of the room, laying a cushion in the hallway for me.
You'll sleep here for a while starting today,
she told me, but it was during the cold winter and I shook my head in refusal. Seeing that, my dad, with a demonic expression, yelled in agreement with my mom.
Don't complain, you useless girl. Be thankful you're not kicked out of the house.
At that time, I didn't know the word unreasonable, but I couldn't understand why only I had to suffer like this, and tears of frustration and anger flowed endlessly. My mom's harassment escalated, and eventually she made me kneel in the hallway and said,
Eat this.
She poured dressing on vegetable peels that were supposed to be thrown away as garbage and made me eat them. Meanwhile, my family enjoyed warm soup in the heated dining room, chatting happily.
Hey, did you know Kevin got the top score in his last test?
It's just a fluke. Thanks to Dad and Mom sending me to a top-level tutoring center, I can concentrate on my studies. Thank you as always. Don't get cocky. Just because you topped your local elementary school, don't get too proud. You need to aim higher, Kevin. I understand. I will continue to study diligently.
After finishing the vegetable peels, I held the empty small plate and asked, Mom, I want some warm soup too. My mom glared at me.
Why don't you drink the leftover bathwater?
She laughed with my dad and Kevin. Listening to the family's conversation, enduring hunger and cold, I sat on the hallway cushion, hugging my knees, waiting for dawn. In that situation, there appeared one person who became my ally. It was my paternal grandma. She had lived far away, but when she started a handmade class, the house she had lived in was too small, so she moved to a vacant house nearby. When I returned home from school, my grandma beckoned me with a smile.
Welcome back. Did you enjoy school? I've prepared some snacks, so have some before you go.
As dusk fell, I watched my grandma prepare dinner in the kitchen. When she noticed my gaze, she turned and asked,
Sherry, you should go home soon. Isn't your mom preparing dinner waiting for you?
I shook my head vigorously. Mom doesn't cook for me.
Then what do you usually eat?
Vegetable peels? Tap water? My grandma rushed to me and hugged me tightly.
From today, you'll eat at my house.
Really? Is that okay?
Of course. Sherry, you're still growing, so you need to eat a lot and grow big.
Thank you, Grandma. I couldn't stop the tears as I felt someone's warmth for the first time. From that day on, I began sneaking away to my grandma's house to eat meals, taking advantage of the times when my family was not around. Being able to eat a warm meal to my heart's content was such a reward. Now that I'm an adult, things that seemed ordinary were precious to me back then. Students started flocking to my grandma's new handmade class. Neither my grandma nor her students ever treated me as a nuisance, but I stayed quietly in the corner of the room drawing so as not to bother anyone. I was terrified of being disliked by my grandma as well. Without her, I would have no place to go at all. During those times, drawing was the only thing that could make me forget the unpleasantness. One day, knowing my situation, my grandma stormed to my parents' house and confronted them.
What are you thinking? Not even feeding her properly. Sherry is your child too.
But my dad just frowned in annoyance and retreated to his room, leaving my mom to deal with it. She sighed and responded,
It's part of a parent's duty to discipline a child for bad grades. Even if you are my mom-in-law, please don't interfere with our parenting.
After my grandma left, my parents scolded me harshly.
Why did you tell Grandma something like that? I come home tired from work, and this is just annoying.
Exactly. You're already incompetent, so don't cause us any more trouble.
I'm sorry. With a heavy heart, all I could do was apologize.
From tomorrow, stop going to Grandma's house to play. When someone like you walks around the neighborhood, it embarrasses us.
They warned me sternly. Feeling down, I walked through the hallway and met my brother Kevin coming out of his room.
You have it easy, always playing freely. I have to study hard every day because I'm capable.
I took his sarcastic remark to heart and glared back at him, too upset to reply. Then one day,
a friend of mine works in an educational institution in England, and when I told him about Kevin, he suggested, why not send him to college here?
To a college? But Kevin is still in elementary school.
No need to worry. It's a meritocracy over there. Regardless of age, those who can perform are given opportunities. Kevin could easily skip grades. Besides, we can't just keep him in America's lower-level education through middle and high school. It would be like throwing money away.
That's true. With Kevin's abilities, he should aim higher for his future. Okay, let's plan to move there as a family soon.
Thank you for doing this for me, Dad, Mom.
While listening to the discussion about moving abroad, I was overwhelmed with anxiety. Would I just be a burden to my family there? I called out to Kevin as he was about to return to his room. Kevin, should we really go to England? Kevin snorted and said dismissively,
That's not something you need to worry about,
and retreated to his room. I couldn't understand what Kevin meant by that. Trying to think positively about moving to England was hard, considering how my family had treated me so far. Then one day, when I came home from school and searched the house calling, Mom, Kevin, but I found no sign of my mom and brother. Evening came and they had not returned, nor had my dad. That day at school, my teacher had said something strange.
Is your dad and mom coming to pick you up later?
The teacher looked puzzled, but I had no idea what she meant and was at a loss for words. What did that mean? Were my parents going to take me somewhere? However, no matter how long I waited, no one from my family came back. I hesitated for a moment before touching the handle of the refrigerator. Normally, I wouldn't even approach the fridge, as my mom would scold me for wasting electricity. My stomach growled loudly, and unable to bear the hunger any longer, I opened the door. Inside, there were only condiments like ketchup and mayonnaise. Anything is fine if it fills me up, I thought, and sucked the ketchup from the tube, but coughed due to the intense sourness and sweet, salty flavor. I put my mouth directly under the faucet and poured tap water into my body. It didn't feel like it was filling my stomach at all. Then I heard the door open from the entrance.
Mom!
Thinking everyone had come back, I rushed to the entrance, only to find my grandma standing there.
Sherry, weren't you supposed to be in England?
Both my grandma and I were surprised and looked at each other.
Your dad, Mom, and Kevin just left for England. I thought you had gone with them.
There was not only surprise in my grandma's expression, but also a mix of sadness and anger.
This is just terrible.
With a determined nod, my grandma said,
Sherry, from today, let's live at Grandma's house.
She smiled kindly and gave me a piggyback ride. Her back was broad and very warm. From that day on, I started living with my grandma. When I returned home from school and said, I'm home, my grandma would respond with a bright, welcome back, from inside the house. That made me happier than anything. Sometimes while sleeping, I would dream of my parents and brother leaving me behind and going somewhere far away. When I woke up, my pillow would be soaked with tears. Abandoned by my family and having forgotten how to smile, my grandma told me,
Those people aren't your family. From now on, I am your family.
She hugged my trembling body tightly every night. Thanks to her, I stopped having those scary dreams.
Thank you for today.
My grandma's handmade class was popular and many students gathered there. On that day, I quietly drew pictures in a corner of the room so as not to be in the way. I really wanted to play more with my grandma, but I wasn't in a position to ask too much. If even my grandma started to dislike me, I would truly have nowhere to go. I never wanted to lose family again. After the class and seeing the students off, my grandma smiled widely and said,
Sherry, thanks for waiting. How about we eat some ice cream together?
She took out the ice cream bars she had bought from the fridge and handed one to me.
Grandma, it's delicious.
The ice cream bar was sweet and cold, but more than anything, I loved the time spent eating with my grandma. Trying to prolong those moments, I ate my ice cream slowly on purpose, but eventually it melted and dropped on the floor. I'm sorry, Grandma. Afraid of being disliked, I tensed up and instinctively apologized. If it were my mom next to me, I would have been punished by now. However, my grandma just chuckled and said, Oh dear, without shouting at me. Instead, she gently stroked my head and said,
Don't be scared. Everyone makes mistakes. Instead, keep smiling, Sherry. I love your smiling face the most.
From here on, I slowly began to regain my smile. After dinner, having bathed and getting ready for bed, my grandma would teach me how to read and write every night.
This is written like this. See? And now you try.
Following my grandma's example, I tried to write. At first, my writing was crooked or completely backward.
Don't rush. If you practice every day, you'll gradually get better at writing.
Her teaching was very clear, and slowly my aversion to words decreased. Within a few years, I could read and write well enough for daily life.
My summer reading assignment got praised by the teacher.
That's wonderful, Sherry. One day, as I quietly drew while watching my grandma's handmade class, a student took a break and approached, peeking over my shoulder at my drawing.
Wow, Sherry, you're good at drawing.
At that exclamation, other students gathered around to see my drawing, raising similar cheers.
She can draw this accurately with just a pencil? She might be a genius. Especially the expressions of the people and the lines of the clothes. They're too real, like at a professional level.
At that time, I was drawing my beloved grandma. I thought the students were just exaggerating out of consideration for my grandma. I was simply drawing what I saw directly onto my sketch pad. After the class and the students had left, my grandma intently looked at the drawing I had made. Those people were making a big deal, huh? I laughed jokingly, but my grandma gave me a serious look.
Not at all. You might have a talent for drawing, Sherry.
I was skeptical, saying, Really? But I recalled being praised in art class at school, where teachers and classmates had said, You're amazing. Back then, I thought they were just being kind because I had been abandoned by my family. Indeed, I had no idea how much talent I had in drawing. Am I really drawing that well?
Yes, you are. You have a promising future, Sherry. I know someone who runs an art school. How about you study there?
Oh, yes, I'd love to. It was my grandma who gave me a clear goal. 12 years have passed since then.
Sherry! Wow, the real deal. We're fans of yours, especially your affection series. The expressions of the people, the warm colors, just looking at them makes us cry.
Saying this, a woman much older than I burst into tears and reached out for a handshake. I also exchanged handshakes with the woman and smiled for the camera during the photo shoot, despite my wry smile.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to more of your work, Sherry.
The gallery was packed every day. I had achieved success as a contemporary realist painter known by the name Sherry.
Miss Hanson, you have a TV appearance scheduled for this evening, so we should start getting ready soon.
Understood, but wait a moment. I stopped the manager and looked down. A little girl was desperately reaching out, asking for a handshake. Thank you. Do you always support me? The girl smiled but didn't make a sound. A woman who seemed to be her mom hurried over and picked her up.
I'm sorry, she's not good at talking to people.
It's okay. Don't rush her. I used to struggle with writing myself, but if the family around her watches over her kindly, she'll find something she loves and eventually shine.
Thank you.
Despite stumbling over the pronunciation, the girl tried her best to express her feelings. You're welcome. As I shook the girl's hand again, her mom hugged her tightly and said with a broad smile,
I'm glad.
Seeing their interaction, I thought to myself that this child would surely be all right.
It's almost time.
Prompted by the manager, I began preparing to leave when the entrance of the hall became unusually noisy.
Please wait. I can't let people without tickets enter.
Looking towards the center of the commotion, I saw a shabbily dressed man and woman. The security guard was desperately trying to stop them, but they pushed past and marched straight towards me.
Let go. We're her family. We don't need tickets.
That's right. You have no right to stop us.
Although they looked completely different from what time had made them, the moment I heard their voices, I felt a chill down my spine. I wanted to run from the place, but my legs were frozen. The man and woman were my dad and mom.
It's your dad. You remember, right? Sherry?
And your mom. I'm so happy to see you.
As the security guards hesitated upon realizing they were my relatives, my parents casually walked up to me. Despite being only in their 40s, they looked much older, easily mistaken for being in their 50s or 60s.
You've become so impressive, Sherry. When we saw your face on a huge advertisement in New York, both your mom and I were shocked. We never imagined our daughter would become so famous.
I always believed in you. I knew you would make it big someday. I'm so glad we had you.
Stunned by the elderly couple's attitude, as if nothing had happened over these 12 years, I was at a loss for words.
What's the matter? You've been so quiet.
Who are you?
What are you saying? You haven't forgotten, have you? It's your dad.
Yes, you must be shy because we appeared so suddenly. You're just surprised, right? That's it, isn't it?
How selfish can people be? What are you doing here now? Though I asked, I deliberately avoided eye contact.
What do you mean, what are we doing here? From today, let's live together again. That's why we came.
I don't know these people. Please have them removed. I instructed the security guard in a flat tone, but the guard, unable to grasp the situation, looked confused. My family is only my grandma. I don't know these people.
You can't possibly still be holding a grudge about that time, can you?
Sorry about that. That was our fault.
My dad apologized insincerely, without any sign of genuine remorse.
But really, holding on to such old grudges, you're still a child, aren't you? We're family. It's normal for a family to live together. You need to grow up.
That's ridiculous. I couldn't contain my anger. The only person I can call family is my grandma. You abandoned me and went overseas, but she was the only one who stood by me. I won't recognize you as my family now. My mom clenched her lips and glared at me. Yes, that look. The cold gaze as if she were looking at something filthy.
If you hate us that much, we'll give up on living together. But in exchange, could you give us just one of your paintings?
Dad's out-of-place request left me struggling to comprehend.
Actually, we're a bit short on money. I heard that your paintings go for $1 million each. Wouldn't it be okay to give us just one?
You have your precious son, Kevin. Why don't you ask him for help? I don't pay for you. I will not give you any of my paintings.
Don't talk about Kevin. I don't even want to hear that guy's name.
Suddenly, my mom screamed almost like a shriek. Why would you say that? He's your son, isn't he?
That guy is no son of ours. Just a disgrace.
Then the two of them bitterly recounted what had become of Kevin over these past 12 years. After moving to England with his family, Kevin quickly entered a prestigious university thanks to his innate academic skills.
Up to that point, he met our expectations.
However, not long after that, Kevin lost his motivation to study. He stopped attending university and fell into a rough lifestyle, hanging out with bad company during the day. No matter what his parents said, he wouldn't listen, and eventually he stopped coming home. Over time, he even had run-ins with the police. The Kevin described by his parents had truly become a lost cause. Yet, I couldn't help but feel sympathy for Kevin. He must have been another victim of these parents' torment. A few days after my family had left for England, I found a notebook in Kevin's room. It contained his frustrations about being forced to study every day, not being allowed to play with friends. He wrote about how scoring A on a test in first grade had forever set his life's path by his parents' expectations. And he envied me because I was not expected to study. When we were kids, Kevin once told me he envied me, but reading his notebook made it all click into place. My dad spoke in a hushed tone, making sure others couldn't hear.
Just between us, Kevin's a lost cause. We tried to rehabilitate him by bringing him back home, but who knows where he is or what he's doing now. Recently, the police came asking about him.
He seems to be hanging out with dangerous people. Might be involved with one of those scam groups that are all the rage now. It's only a matter of time before he gets arrested.
So, as you can see, if you pity us being tormented by such a foolish son, please, could you just give us one of your paintings? That alone would save us. It's your chance to do a filial deed, isn't it?
Saying this, my parents started to kneel before me.
Enough of this nonsense.
The one who shouted suddenly was my grandma in her wheelchair.
I've been quiet, listening all this time. Kevin's gone bad, so now you turn to Sherry for help? You must be joking. You were the ones who abandoned her.
Ugh, Mom, why are you here?
It's my precious granddaughter's exhibition. It's only natural for family to come.
With that, my grandma glared at my dad and Mom. You two are no longer family or anything else to her. You're just strangers. Now understand and get out. Hey, security, what are you doing? After being scolded by my grandma, the bewildered security guards started to act.
Wait a minute, we have our own ideas.
Ideas? Let's hear these ideas of yours.
You kidnapped our daughter, didn't you?
Kidnap? You were the ones who abandoned her and went overseas. Though my grandma was furious, I managed a wry smile and said, Calm down, Grandma. Getting all worked up like that will just raise your blood pressure. Then, facing my smirking parents, I said firmly, I have some unfortunate news for you. Legally, my grandma and I are now mom and daughter. Thus, she cannot be accused of kidnapping.
What nonsense are you talking about? That's impossible without the consent of us, her real parents.
Actually, it's possible. I was adopted by my grandma when I was 15. Legally, anyone over 15 can be adopted without the consent of their biological parents.
Don't be ridiculous. How can that even be allowed?
As my parents continued to fuss and tried to sit down in the gallery, they were escorted out by police officers who had been called to the scene.
Sherry, are you all right?
My grandma asked, rubbing my back with her usual kind smile. Don't worry, Grandma, I'm fine, I replied, returning her smile with a wide one of my own. After being taken to the police station, my parents were reportedly scolded severely by the officers.
Are you even fit to be parents?
A friend who had moved from the cultural to the social section of a newspaper had let me know discreetly. Later, I learned through the news that Kevin had been arrested for fraud. The image of Kevin being put into a police vehicle appeared on the TV screen, a far cry from the prodigy he once was called. My parents ended up facing hefty damages for the crimes committed by Kevin, and with reporters crowding outside their home daily, they were on the run.
Help us out, will you? Aren't we your real parents?
Yes, have you forgotten that we were the ones who brought you into this world?
Despite their repeated attempts to approach my home and studio, my grandma and I decided to move to a high-security condo to prevent them from easily reaching us.
I'm sorry to have you take care of an old grandma like me.
No, I'm very happy. After all, I owe everything I am today to you, Grandma. Around this time, my grandma started to fall ill frequently. I hugged her tightly from behind and said, I love you, Grandma. Her back had grown much smaller, but it was as warm as ever.
Becca, you're still such an unthoughtful and worthless wife as always. This was a trip that my son and I were looking forward to. You, who have no part in this, can go home right away. So my mother-in-law starts nagging me the moment my husband leaves the table. We were on an overseas trip that my husband asked me to plan. Well, if she goes that far, it's inevitable I'll go home. What happens to the two of them after that is none of my concern. My name is Becca, a married woman working for a multinational corporation. Since my job is easy to manage in terms of schedule, I've been working mostly remotely since getting married, so I spend more time at home. My husband Jack is the type who overvalues himself and always wants to look good. He's a big spender and has never contributed a penny to our household. I didn't realize this while we were dating, but after we got married and started living together, his true nature gradually emerged. His mother seems to enjoy bragging about her son. I've heard of mothers who dote on their sons. I was prepared for that to some extent, and was willing to tolerate it. But she is obstinate and strong-willed. She doesn't listen to other people's opinions. She even completely ignores her husband's opinions because she believes that her son is the best. She doesn't like me at all. Every time we meet, she always has some snide remark. She seems to particularly dislike the fact that I live comfortably on my son's salary alone. She keeps nagging me, saying, "You're still young, you should work outside." I've explained many times that I continue to work after marriage and that I have a job that I can do from home. But in her mind, working from home is just a part-time job. She assumes that I'm just pretending to work by always looking at my computer. She presumes that I'm probably playing games. Apparently, I'm a worthless wife who doesn't do housework properly and only plays computer games despite being a stay-at-home wife. My husband, of course, understands my work style, but he has never explained it to his mother, even when it's said right in front of him. He turns a blind eye. Even when I asked him to explain it well, he says he wants us women to handle it well and completely throws it at me. He even says he doesn't want to get involved in troubles. Once, when I persistently asked him to do something similar, he threw a completed divorce paper at me. It urged me to be treated like that, but I thought about divorcing him. But I heard that getting a divorce is more difficult than getting married. It would be a problem if it were more difficult than the current situation, so I ended up giving in to my husband's argument. I understood that my husband prioritizes his mother in everything. It's frustrating, but I feel like I need to find a way to deal with her while skillfully deflecting her. I didn't agree to divorce because of this change in my feelings, but it seems that my husband thinks I'm head over heels for him and didn't want to break up. His pompous attitude is getting worse day by day. It's cute when a child tries to act grown up, but when an adult does it, it's rather a turnoff. I've learned to ignore his pompous words and act as if I haven't seen his actions. There is another reason why I didn't divorce him. Due to my husband's job, we live quite a distance from my in-laws. We meet once a year, or at most, twice a year. I thought I could tolerate that much. While the world was making a fuss about having 9 consecutive days off, if you take a vacation on weekdays, both my husband and I were working. In my case, American holidays don't matter much because I adjust my schedule according to international circumstances. As for my husband, it's just that he wasn't taking 9 consecutive days off according to the calendar. When he returned home after his first day back at work, he announced, "Let's go on an overseas trip." When I asked him what he was talking about, he said that his colleagues had taken a vacation and made it a 9-day holiday to go on an overseas trip, and he was quite proud of it, which made him incredibly annoyed and regretful. I was dumbfounded by his childishness, but I haven't been on a trip this year, so I suggested a domestic trip. The reason being, my husband has no experience with overseas trips, so if we were to go overseas, he would have to apply for a passport. "There won't be a problem if you're with me. You're fluent in multiple languages, he said. I studied abroad when I was a student and had been on many overseas trips when I was single. In addition to English, I can hold a conversation in Spanish and a bit of Chinese if necessary. When my mother back home got hooked on Korean dramas, I studied Korean with her. However, I didn't get much opportunity to use it, so I'm not very confident. Sure, compared to my husband, I might be good at languages, but that doesn't mean that applying for passports will be finished in a snap. I tried to persuade him to go abroad during the summer or winter, but he wouldn't listen at all. On the contrary, despite having no experience, he decided on the country to visit, took leave without permission, and told me to make it work on the schedule. It's not a tour. Why should I have to act with strangers? He furthermore declared. He said that English is a universal language and that we should have no problem if it's just the two of us. I thought maybe it's fine, but before I knew it, he said, "That's right. I promised to take Mom along. I'll count on you for that too. Your mother-in-law too. Even for me, taking care of two inexperienced people abroad is too much. You should show some filial piety once in a while. Maybe you can gain some favor by doing so. Our entire kind and good husband, this is for your own good, Becca. You should be grateful." He said things that made it seem like he was doing me a favor, but arguing against it started to seem foolish. I decided to quietly make reservations as my husband instructed, and I came up with another good idea. Starting from applying for my mother-in-law and husband's passports, booking flights and hotel reservations, it's a lot of trouble, but in order to implement my idea, I patiently fulfilled all my husband's wishes and created a perfect schedule. On the day of the overseas trip, my mother-in-law, who knows nothing of my troubles, cheerfully and childishly exclaimed, "Just as I expected from my son. It's a long journey overseas. The seats are business class, aren't they?" Knowing my husband, he probably said something like, "I'll take you there." He probably bragged about himself, saying things like, "I made the reservations and planned the schedule." The truth is, I did everything, and my husband did nothing. They did nothing, and left all the procedures to me. What's more, the two of them, who have hardly any experience with airports, moved around on their own while I was doing the procedures. They walked around aimlessly, even when it was boarding time, and I had a hard time finding them. The airport staff even asked, "Would you like us to make a call announcement? It's Becca's fault for not telling us the boarding gate." It was such a fuss, but they showed no remorse, saying, "And this wife was planning to have fun by herself, leaving us behind." During the flight, they behaved relatively quietly, but it was honestly annoying and embarrassing every time they called a flight attendant. Several hours later, we arrived in the destination country. After finishing immigration procedures and such, just when I thought I could finally head straight to the hotel and take a break, my husband turned pale and said, "I'm going to the bathroom," and thrust his luggage at me and ran away. I don't understand why only my husband got sick when we ate the same thing. He had been grinning and calling his favorite flight attendant. I guess this is his divine punishment. Serves him right. "Becca, you really are an inconsiderate daughter-in-law. How long are you planning to stay here?" My mother-in-law said, "This trip, my son planned it for me. It's a mother-son trip without the need for a daughter-in-law. You're a money grabber who doesn't even work. How brazen of you to think you can enjoy this trip for free. Go home now." "Are you sure? Whether it's good or bad, I can't have fun when you're here." "I see. That's not good. All right then. I'll go home now." I handed my husband's luggage back to my mother-in-law, only taking my carry-on, and turned my back to her. My mother-in-law, who received my husband's luggage, was stunned and had a very vacant expression on her face. It's not possible for her to react like that when she told me to go home. I was doing my best to hold back my laughter. My husband seemed to have been going in and out of the bathroom several times, so we didn't cross paths. Luckily, I was able to get a ticket back to America, so I became a passenger on the plane headed there. Originally, I had planned to find a chance to return home alone. If we had a good relationship, I wouldn't mind being taken around as a tour guide, but not with that mother and son. It's only stressful for me, and I will gain nothing. I can't stop grinning just thinking about what the two of them, who can't speak anything but English, will do when they are left behind. If they think a little, they should be able to manage with the translation function of their smartphone app. But I can't imagine my husband, who likes to show off and inflate his own importance, doing something like that. When I safely returned back after making a few detours, I headed straight to the luxury hotel where my parents were waiting. My husband Jack told me to show respect from my parents, so I treated them to a luxury trip in upstate New York. They were to travel there leisurely on a popular scenic route, enjoying the scenery and meals along the way. I managed to meet up with them earlier than planned, much to their surprise. When I briefly explained the situation, they were taken aback. They were astounded that I had agreed to such a request from Jack. My phone was bombarded with calls and messages from Jack, all of which I ignored. I switched off my phone and enjoyed this day to my heart's content. When I returned home after partying with my parents, I received a call from the embassy. According to their explanation, Jack had returned from the restroom to find his mother, my mother-in-law, sitting alone. Despite being surprised that I was not there, he was livid. He tried to contact me but couldn't get through, so he decided to make his way to the hotel by himself. However, not knowing where to go, he was visibly flustered when a kind person spoke to him in broken English. He was led away after being told that they knew the place and would take him there, only to be robbed of all his money, passport, and valuables. My mother-in-law was even stripped of her jewelry. When he was found standing on the street looking destitute, the police picked him up and referred him to the embassy for help. That's how he was able to contact me. The embassy official asked me to come and pick him up. He couldn't withdraw money because his wallet, which contained his bank cards, had been stolen. However, I asked back why I, a stranger, had to do that. I explained that I was already divorced from the man who was there. The truth was, I had kept the divorce papers he had thrown at me some time ago. Back then, I decided not to proceed with a divorce as I had heard it would be a lot of trouble. But this time, I had reached my limit. After filling in the divorce papers, I headed to the hotel right after landing back in the States. To my surprise, the divorce was accepted without any fuss. I already had a new place lined up, and the contract had been signed while making the travel arrangements. I didn't want to use the furniture I had shared with Jack. It made my skin crawl. In my new place, I planned to buy everything new, so I packed for both a trip and the move at the same time. All I need to bring to the new place is my work tools and my favorite clothes. I could easily have everything else sent by the courier at a specified date and time. The embassy staff did not ask anything more from me, and the conversation ended. Later, it seems my former mother-in-law had pleaded with my former father-in-law, and with his help, my ex-husband Jack and ex-mother-in-law were able to return to the States. However, Jack, who had blown his top, contacted me. "You left me and divorced me without my knowledge, abandoned," he exclaimed. "No, I just obeyed your mother's instructions to leave. If you have any complaints, talk to your mom. And please consider the business class flight I arranged for you on your return as my farewell gift," I responded. I also reminded him that he was the one who had first brought up the divorce papers. I only filed the divorce papers he had prepared, fulfilling his wish for a divorce, I clarified. "Do you think such sophistry will work? How much more do you want to embarrass me?" Jack retorted. "Embarrassed? How so? If you want to feel embarrassed." "I have a better story. Want to hear it?" "What is it?" "Well, did you know you're a regular at an adult entertainment club? You're pretty invested in a favorite girl there, aren't you? Rather than contributing money to the household, you are heavily splurging on her. But you ended up in debt when her demands escalated. I had an investigation agency look into a debt collection letter addressed to Jack that had been delivered to our house. Although Jack was a good spender, his obsessive behavior seemed to be a turnoff. His favorite girl's true feelings were that she thought he would eventually stop coming if she kept asking for more money and expensive gifts. I wonder what Jack felt when he heard that. That's quite an embarrassing story, isn't it? If you make any more fuss or contact me again, I'll spill the beans to your company. Got it. Being disliked by the girl he was infatuated with would be an unbearable humiliation for Jack, considering his personality. If this became known, it would be a great embarrassment. Jack, who until now had been aggressive, just said, "Goddard," in a feeble voice and ended the call. A few days later, my ex-father-in-law contacted me. He told me he had also divorced his wife, my ex-mother-in-law. I thought it was unnecessary as we were no longer related, but it seems he contacted me to expose my ex-mother-in-law's true nature, as we both have been treated poorly by her. My former father-in-law, suspicious of his wife's behavior, investigated while she was out and discovered that his retirement savings had been depleted. The money was apparently spent on beauty treatments and cosmetic procedures. As I'm not familiar with such things, I was totally unaware. When asked for a women's perspective, I was stumped because I hadn't noticed it either. I guess seeing someone only once a year makes changes more noticeable, but I truly hadn't picked up on anything. I even asked my former father-in-law, "Are you sure it's for beauty treatments?" She seems to have sunk quite a bit into it, but there's no visible change. Perhaps there were slight changes that only my former mother-in-law could notice. It felt like throwing money down the drain. Naturally, my former mother-in-law, who was kicked out penniless, turned to her son, Jack. However, Jack, the backbone of the family, is up to his eyeballs in debt after his divorce from me. He even lost his apartment for failing to pay the rent. Now he and his mother seem to be living in a drafty, run-down apartment. Yet, his mother has no intention of working and won't quit her beauty treatments. On top of repaying his debts, the burden of his mother's beauty expenses is weighing heavily on Jack, who I hear is working around the clock. It seems the vanity of wanting to present a larger-than-life image, even in the face of a declining living standard, doesn't change. If they're content with this situation, I won't say another word.
I stood in the kitchen, the aroma of brewed coffee hanging in the air, when Arthur's words sliced through the calm like a knife. "Evelyn, we've decided to live with Ethan and Lisa, so you need to leave." His voice, once warm and loving, now held a chilling finality. I blinked, disbelieving. The room spun slightly as I tried to comprehend his words. Lisa, standing beside him with arms crossed, chimed in with a sneer. "Yeah, it's about time. You've been nothing but a freeloader, Evelyn." A freeloader? Me? The absurdity of it stung. I had been the backbone of this family's finances for years, while Arthur played the role of the struggling artist, and now this? My gaze shifted from Arthur to Lisa, and then back to Arthur. He avoided my eyes, his face an emotionless mask. Anger and disbelief churned in my stomach. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" I asked, my voice shaking. "No joke, Evelyn. We think it's best for everyone," Arthur said, his tone devoid of the warmth I once knew. The man I married, the man I built a life with, was now evicting me from my own home with the help of our son's wife. The absurdity of it all was overwhelming. I wanted to scream, to shout, to make them see the injustice. But all I could muster was a hollow laugh. "You'll regret this," I said, the words coming out colder than I intended. Arthur's eyes finally met mine, but there was no remorse there, just a blank stare. "Just pack your things and go, Evelyn. It's for the best." I looked around the kitchen, the heart of our home where I'd cooked countless meals, where we'd shared so many memories. And now they were casting me out like an unwanted guest. "I'll leave," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "But remember this, Arthur, you'll regret this day." I turned, leaving them standing in the kitchen, and walked to our bedroom. My bedroom, the room where I had spent over 2 decades of my life, now just a hollow reminder of a love that had withered away. I packed a suitcase with clothes and essentials, grabbed my work laptop, bank book, and some valuables, and headed for the door. As I passed the living room, I saw them, sitting together, already erasing my existence from their lives. "You think you've won," I said, pausing at the door, "but this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." Without waiting for a response, I walked out, the door closing behind me with a finality that echoed in my heart. As I drove to a nearby hotel, my mind raced with plans and possibilities. They thought they could discard me, but they were wrong. I was Evelyn Carter, and I would not go down without a fight. This betrayal would not go unpunished. I checked into the hotel and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The events of the day replayed in my mind, fueling a fire within me. They had unleashed something in me, something fierce and unyielding. I would rebuild my life, but not before making sure Arthur and Lisa understood the gravity of their mistake. They had underestimated me, and that was their biggest mistake. As I drifted into a restless sleep, one thought remained clear in my mind. This was not the end, but a new beginning. A beginning where I would take back control of my life and make them rue the day they crossed Evelyn Carter. The night at the hotel was restless, each tick of the clock a reminder of my shattered life. In the dim light of dawn, memories flooded in, bittersweet and sharp. I met Arthur when life was simpler, filled with dreams and possibilities. He was a graphic designer with a creative spark that ignited something in me. Our courtship was a whirlwind, a blend of passion and promise. We married young, and soon Ethan came along, completing our little family. But time has a way of eroding even the strongest foundations. Arthur's once passionate drive for his work dwindled into complacency. I continued working at a food manufacturing company, my career progressing steadily. It was my salary that kept us afloat, especially when Arthur decided to leave his stable job to pursue freelance work. "Are you sure about this, Arthur?" I had asked, concern lacing my words. He was confident, almost dismissive. "I'll get work from my contacts. Plus, you're doing great with your job." My job, which he casually referred to as a side gig, was the lifeline of our finances. His ignorance of my professional worth was a growing wedge between us. It was during this time that Helen, Arthur's mother, became a central part of our lives. Her health was failing, and I found myself taking on the role of her caregiver. It seemed natural. She was family, after all. But Arthur's lack of involvement was a bitter pill to swallow. "Why don't you help more with your mother?" I once asked, frustration evident in my voice. Arthur just shrugged, his attention more on his designs than on my words. It was always about his work, his needs, never about Helen or me. As I lay in the hotel bed, the hurt from years of being undervalued and overlooked simmered within me. They had taken my kindness for weakness, my silence for submission. But no more. I would show them the strength of a woman scorned, a woman who had given her all only to be discarded. My plan began to take shape in the early morning light. It was time for Arthur and Lisa to face the consequences of their actions. They thought they had removed a problem from their lives, but in reality, they had ignited a fire. I would start with Arthur's finances. It was time he learned the true value of the money I brought into our household. I knew his freelance work wasn't as lucrative as he pretended. His pride would crumble under the weight of financial realities. And Lisa, with her smug sense of entitlement, would learn that her actions had repercussions. I remembered her disdain, her condescending words. She had no idea about the struggles and sacrifices I had made for this family. I rose from the bed, a new determination coursing through me. I would not be a victim of their cruelty. I would be the architect of their comeuppance. As the sun rose, casting a warm glow through the window, I felt a sense of empowerment. Evelyn Carter was no longer just a name. It was a symbol of resilience and retribution. They had underestimated me, but they would soon learn the cost of their betrayal. This was not just about revenge, it was about justice. And I would have it, no matter what it took. The first rays of sunlight brought clarity and resolve. I checked out of the hotel with a single goal in mind, to begin my carefully crafted plan of retribution against Arthur and Lisa. Returning home to gather the rest of my belongings was a calculated move. I needed to see Arthur to gauge his reactions to feed the fire of my resolve. The house felt different as I stepped in, colder, unwelcoming. Arthur was in the living room, his back to me, lost in his thoughts. "I've come for the rest of my things," I announced, my voice steady. He turned, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before it settled into an indifferent mask. "Fine. Take whatever you need." As I moved through the house, memories taunted me, but I pushed them aside. This was no time for sentimentality. It was a time for action. In our bedroom, I quickly sorted through our shared life, compartmentalizing emotions, focusing on the task. Clothes, personal items, some documents, I was methodical, leaving no trace of myself behind. Arthur hovered at the doorway, watching. "Evelyn, are you sure about this?" His question was a mix of confusion and a faint hint of concern. It was almost laughable. "You made your choice, Arthur. Now live with it," I replied, without looking at him. I could feel his gaze on me, but I didn't falter. This was the man who had underestimated me, who had pushed me out of my own life. No more. The final item I packed was a photo of us in happier times. I stared at it, a bitter smile on my lips. Then, without a second thought, I left it on the dresser, a reminder of what he had lost. As I carried my belongings to the car, Arthur's voice stopped me. "Evelyn, about the finances." I turned, meeting his eyes. "What about them? We might need to discuss how we'll handle things moving forward." "Oh, now you're concerned about finances?" My voice was tinged with sarcasm. "Don't worry, Arthur. You'll manage. After all, I was just a side gig, remember?" His expression faltered, guilt and realization dawning. But it was too late for regrets. I drove away without looking back, the chapter of Arthur and me firmly closed. But this was just the beginning. My mind raced with plans, each more satisfying than the last. I knew Arthur's weaknesses, his pride, his finances, his superficial understanding of my contributions. I would use these to my advantage. He would learn the hard way the value of what he had so callously discarded. And Lisa, her arrogance, would be her downfall. I would make sure of it. She thought she could step into my life, take my place without consequence. She was sorely mistaken. I found a small apartment, a temporary refuge, as I plotted my next moves. It was modest but sufficient for my needs. As I unpacked, the reality of my situation sank in. I was alone, but I was also free. Free to rebuild, free to exact revenge, free to be the woman I was meant to be. That night, as I lay in bed in my new apartment, I felt a surge of empowerment. They had pushed me to the edge, but I had emerged stronger, more determined. Evelyn Carter would no longer be a victim. She would be a force to be reckoned with. Settled in my new apartment, I strategized my next moves. The first step was to confront the financial facade Arthur had constructed. It was time he faced the reality of our situation, the reality he so conveniently ignored. I started by securing my financial assets. I transferred my savings to a new account, ensuring Arthur had no access. This was my hard-earned money, and I would not let him squander it any longer. Next, I prepared for the inevitable legal battle. I contacted a lawyer, someone known for their tenacity and success in divorce cases. As I explained my situation, the lawyer nodded, understanding the gravity of my case. "We'll make sure you get what you deserve, Mrs. Carter," she assured me, her voice firm and confident. I felt a sense of relief, knowing I had a professional in my corner. This wasn't just about money, it was about justice. A few days later, I received a call from Arthur. His voice was strained, a hint of desperation creeping in. "Evelyn, we need to talk about the divorce and the finances." I agreed to meet, curious to see how he would handle this confrontation. We met at a quiet cafe, a neutral ground for what was to be a decisive discussion. Arthur looked worn, the stress of the situation clearly taking its toll. "Evelyn, I think we rushed into this. Maybe we can work things out?" His plea was pathetic, a stark contrast to the confident man I once knew. "Work things out? You threw me out, Arthur. You made your choice." He flinched at my words, but I felt no sympathy. This was the bed he had made. "We can't afford a divorce, Evelyn, not with my financial situation." "Oh, now you admit it," I retorted, my voice laced with scorn. "You're finally facing reality." Arthur's eyes darted around the cafe, his pride wounded. I thought we could come to an agreement, without lawyers." I leaned in, my gaze steady. "You want an agreement? Fine. I want $10,000. That's my price for an amicable divorce." Arthur's face paled. "10,000? I don't have that kind of money." "That's not my problem, Arthur. You wanted me out. You pay the price." He struggled for words, his facade crumbling. I'll see what I can do." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "You have 1 week, Arthur. 1 week to give me what I'm owed." As I left the cafe, I could feel Arthur's eyes on me, but I didn't look back. This was more than just a financial transaction. It was a statement. I was no longer the woman he could manipulate and discard. Back in my apartment, I allowed myself a small smile. The tables were turning. Arthur was finally understanding the cost of his betrayal. And this was just the beginning. There was more to come, and I would make sure he paid every penny of the emotional debt he owed me. The week after confronting Arthur was a whirlwind of activity. I found solace in action. each step a move towards reclaiming my life. But the true test came when Arthur called to arrange the exchange of the $10,000. We met at the same cafe, a public space where emotions couldn't easily run amok. Arthur was there first, looking more defeated than ever. He handed me an envelope, his hand trembling slightly. "This is everything I could gather," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't count the money there. I didn't need to. The look in his eyes told me it was all there. "Consider this the end of our chapter, Arthur." As I turned to leave, I could feel his gaze heavy on my back. But I walked away without hesitation. This was more than a financial transaction. It was a reclaiming of my dignity. Back in my apartment, I counted the money. Each bill was a testament to my resilience, a down payment on my new life. But it wasn't the end of my plan. Not yet. The next step was Ethan and Lisa. Arthur's betrayal was one thing, but their complicity stung deeper. It was time they faced their own consequences. A few days later, the opportunity presented itself. Ethan called, his voice strained. "Mom, we need to talk. Can you come over?" I agreed, curious about what prompted his sudden request. At their house, the atmosphere was tense. Ethan fidgeted nervously, while Lisa's usual arrogance was replaced by unease. "What's this about, Ethan?" I asked, my tone neutral. "It's about Dad," Ethan began, his eyes avoiding mine. "He's in a bad place. Financially, we might lose the house." Lisa chimed in, her voice laced with frustration. "And it's your fault with that ridiculous demand for money." My heart hardened at her words. "My fault? I was thrown out of my own home, Lisa. Did you expect me to just walk away without anything?" "But we're family," Ethan interjected, a note of desperation in his voice. "Family?" I scoffed. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me." Lisa's face reddened, her facade crumbling. "Well, what do you expect us to do now? You've taken everything." I stood, my resolve unshaken. "You expect sympathy from me? You made your choices. Now, live with them." As I left, I could hear them arguing, their voices a mix of blame and regret. But it was too late for apologies. They had shown their true colors, and now they were facing the consequences. In the solitude of my apartment, I reflected on the day's events. I had set out to reclaim my dignity, to make them understand the pain they had caused, and I had succeeded. But as I lay in bed that night, a sense of emptiness crept in. Revenge had brought satisfaction, yes, but it hadn't filled the void left by my shattered family. Yet I knew there was no going back. This was my path now, and I had to see it through to the end. As the days passed, my life settled into a new rhythm, one defined by independence and strength. Yet, the final act of my plan remained. It was time to expose Arthur and Lisa's true nature, to bring their deceit into the light. I began by digging into Arthur's financial affairs. It wasn't difficult. His desperation had made him careless. I discovered a trail of debt, poor investments, and most shockingly, evidence of an affair. It was the ammunition I needed. I confronted Arthur once more, this time at his office. It was a place where he felt in control, but I was about to shatter that illusion. "Arthur, we need to talk," I said, my voice calm yet assertive as I entered his office. He looked up, surprise etched on his face. "Evelyn, what are you doing here?" "I know about the affair, Arthur, and the debts," I stated, watching as his face drained of color. That's ridiculous," he stammered, but the guilt in his eyes betrayed him. "Don't insult my intelligence. I have proof," I countered, my words sharp. Arthur sank into his chair, the facade of confidence crumbling. "Evelyn, please, let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. You've made your bed, now lie in it." My words were cold, a reflection of the void he had left in my heart. I left his office, leaving him to stew in his guilt and fear. But my plan wasn't complete. Lisa was next. I invited her for coffee, a public setting where she couldn't easily escape. When she arrived, her usual brashness was absent, replaced by caution. "Evelyn, what is this about?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. "It's about you and Arthur," I said, meeting her gaze. "Your role in this whole mess." Lisa shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, but you do," I countered. "You encouraged Arthur's decisions, thinking it would benefit you. But now, you're just as responsible for the fallout." Lisa's facade cracked, her composure slipping. "You can't blame me for everything." "I can, and I do. You were part of this, Lisa. You can't escape that," I replied, my voice steady. Lisa looked away, unable to meet my gaze. She knew the truth. even if she couldn't admit it. As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of closure. I had exposed their deceit, their selfishness. They were left to face the consequences of their actions, just as I had faced mine. In the days that followed, the fallout from my revelations hit hard. Arthur's affair became public knowledge, his reputation tarnished. Lisa, caught in the crossfire, faced her own set of challenges. Her marriage with Ethan strained under the weight of the truth. I watched from a distance, my heart heavy yet vindicated. They had underestimated me, but I had shown them the strength of my resolve. Yet, in the quiet moments, I couldn't help but wonder if the price of revenge was too high. I had regained my dignity, but at what cost? The family I once loved was now broken, a casualty of the war I had waged. In the weeks following my confrontation with Arthur and Lisa, the repercussions of their actions, and mine, began to unfold in full view. The house that once echoed with our laughter now stood as a silent monument to broken dreams and betrayal. Arthur's career suffered greatly from the scandal. His clients left, unwilling to associate with a man whose personal life was in shambles. His financial troubles, once hidden behind a veil of pride, were now laid bare for all to see. Lisa, on the other hand, found herself isolated. Her marriage with Ethan strained to the breaking point, as the truth of her manipulation and greed surfaced. The social circles that once welcomed her now turned their backs, leaving her to face the consequences of her actions alone. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Ethan had moved out, unable to cope with the continuous quarrels and the stark reality of their situation. Lisa, once so full of confidence and disdain, was now a shadow of her former self. And then there was Arthur. He called me one evening, his voice a mixture of sorrow and desperation. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. For everything." His apology, though late, was a testament to the depth of his downfall. "Your sorry can't undo what's been done, Arthur." I know I've made mistakes, but I'm paying for them now," he said, his voice breaking. "You're not the only one paying, Arthur. We all are," I replied, the weight of our collective pain heavy in my voice. We ended the call with no promises of reconciliation, only the somber acknowledgement of our shared history and its painful end. In the aftermath, I found solace in my newfound independence. The pain of the past was still there, a dull ache that ebbed and flowed with the days. But there was also a sense of freedom, a liberation from the chains of a loveless marriage and the suffocating deceit that had come with it. As I rebuilt my life piece by piece, I realized that revenge, though sweet, was also bittersweet. It had given me closure, yes, but at a cost. The family I had once cherished was now just a memory, a lesson learned in the hardest way possible. But life has a way of moving forward, and so did I. I found joy in small things, in the quiet moments of solitude, in the new beginnings that each day brought. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined me. I was Evelyn Carter, a woman who had faced her demons and emerged stronger. The journey had been long and fraught with pain, but I had survived, and in that survival I had found a new sense of self, a new purpose. As I look back now, I realize that the greatest revenge was not in the downfall of Arthur and Lisa, but in the rise of my own spirit. In the end, I had not just survived, I had thrived. "Zara, what the hell is this?" I demanded, holding up the shredded remains of my late mother's quilt. Zara smirked, her green eyes glinting with malice. "Oops, my scissors slipped. Guess you'll have to toss out that ratty old thing now, Camille. It's not like it belonged in this house anyway, just like you." I stood there, my hands shaking with rage as I clutched the tattered fabric. This quilt was the last piece of my mother I had left, a cherished memento of the love and warmth she always provided. And now, thanks to my spiteful teenage sister-in-law, it was ruined. But I shouldn't have been surprised. This was just another day in the Hawthorne household, where I was constantly reminded that I would never truly belong. As I looked around the lavish penthouse with its sleek modern furnishings and breathtaking city views, I felt like an outsider, an intruder in my own home. I had given up everything, my career as a fashion designer, my independence, my identity, to be with Jackson, to be the perfect society wife. But no matter how hard I tried, his family made it clear I would never be good enough. "What's going on in here?" Olivia, my mother-in-law, strutted into the room, her critical gaze sweeping over me. "Camille, I thought I told you to have the laundry finished by noon. Honestly, it's not that hard. What do you even do all day? I bit my tongue, swallowing the retort that bubbled up, that I spent my days cooking, cleaning, and catering to her every whim, that I poured my heart into being the homemaker she demanded, even as she belittled my every effort. I was just about to get to it, Olivia, I said evenly, but then I found this. I held up the destroyed quilt, my eyes burning with unshed tears. Zara, she... Oh, that old thing? Olivia cut me off with a dismissive wave. It was an eyesore anyway. Zara did you a favor getting rid of it. She turned to her daughter with an approving smile. Good job, sweetheart. This house has no room for Camille's second-hand rags. Zara preened under the praise, shooting me a triumphant smirk. I opened my mouth to protest, but just then Jackson walked in. What's with all the commotion? He asked, loosening his tie. His eyes fell on the quilt in my hands, and he frowned. Is that your mother's blanket? What happened to it? Your sister destroyed it, I said, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. On purpose, and your mother is congratulating her. Jackson sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. Cam, I'm sure it was an accident. Don't make a big deal out of it. An accident? Was he serious? I stared at him, searching his face for any hint of the man I fell in love with, the man who promised to always stand by my side. But lately, that man was getting harder and harder to find. You're taking their side? I asked incredulously. Again, Jackson, this quilt was priceless to me. It was all I had left of my mother, and now it's gone. It's just a blanket, Camille, he said impatiently. I'll buy you a new one, a nicer one. Just let it go, okay? Let it go. That's what he always said. Every time his family disrespected me, every time they made me feel small and worthless, he told me to let it go, to be the bigger person. But as I stood there, surrounded by the people who were supposed to be my family, I realized I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep shrinking myself to fit into their narrow expectations. I couldn't keep sacrificing my happiness, my very sense of self, for a man who wouldn't even stand up for me. Something inside me snapped, a hidden reserve of strength and resolve I didn't know I had. I dropped the ruined quilt and squared my shoulders, meeting Olivia's icy glare head-on. No, I said firmly, I won't let it go. Not this time. I'm done being your punching bag. I'm done playing by your rules. From now on, I'm standing up for myself, with or without your support. And with that, I turned on my heel and walked out, my head held high. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I was done being a doormat in my own life. It was time to take back control, no matter the cost. The confrontation with Zara and Olivia left me shaking with anger and humiliation. I couldn't believe the cruelty they were capable of, destroying the one thing I cherished most. And Jackson, my supposed partner, had once again failed to stand up for me. I stormed into our bedroom, hot tears stinging my eyes. I yanked open the closet door, grabbing a suitcase and tossing clothes haphazardly inside. I couldn't stay here another minute, not with these vipers who delighted in tearing me down. What do you think you're doing? Jackson's voice cut through the room, sharp and accusatory. I whirled around, my heart pounding. I'm leaving, Jackson. I can't do this anymore. I won't. He scoffed, crossing his arms. Don't be dramatic, Camille. It was just a stupid quilt. It was my mother's quilt, I shouted, my voice cracking. The only piece of her I had left, and your sister destroyed it on purpose, while your mother cheered her on. They didn't mean anything by it, he said dismissively. You're overreacting as usual. I stared at him, incredulous. Overreacting? Are you kidding me? Your family has done nothing but belittle and demean me from the moment I stepped into this house, and you've let them. What do you want me to do, Camille? He snapped. They're my family. I can't just turn my back on them. But you can turn your back on me, I retorted. Your wife? The mother of your child? He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. You knew what you were getting into when you married me. You knew my family could be difficult. Difficult? I laughed bitterly. They're monsters, Jackson, and you're just as bad for enabling them. His face hardened, his eyes turning to ice. Watch yourself, Camille. Remember, I'm the one who gave you this life. This luxurious penthouse, the clothes on your back, the food on your plate. Without me, you're nothing. His words hit me like a slap. Is that really how he saw me? As some charity case he had deigned to rescue from a life of mediocrity? Well then, I guess it's a good thing I'm leaving, I said coldly. I'd rather have nothing than spend another second with you and your toxic family. I zipped up the suitcase, brushing past him, but he grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to bruise. If you walk out that door, don't bother coming back, he hissed. I'll make sure you never see Mia again. I'll bury you in so much legal red tape you'll be destitute and alone. Is that what you want? Fear seized my heart at the thought of losing my daughter, of being cut off from the one pure, untainted love in my life. But then something caught my eye. Peeking out from under the bed was a scrap of red lace. With a sinking feeling, I reached down and pulled out a skimpy thong, one that definitely didn't belong to me. What the hell is this? I demanded, holding up the offending undergarment. For a split second, panic flashed across Jackson's face, but he quickly composed himself, snatching the thong from my hand. It's nothing, he said smoothly, probably just something of Zara's that got mixed up in the laundry. Bullshit, I spat. Zara wouldn't be caught dead in La Perla, but you know who would? I stepped closer, my voice dripping with venom. Your secretary, Lily. He blanched, confirming my suspicions. The late nights at the office, the whispered phone calls, the designer gifts he claimed were for clients. It all made sense now. How long? I asked, my voice eerily calm. How long have you been screwing her behind my back? Camille, I can explain, he started, but I cut him off with a harsh laugh. Save it, I said, grabbing my suitcase. I'm done. With you, with this sham of a marriage, with this entire fucked up family. You can have your little mistress, but I'm taking Mia, and I'm taking you for everything you're worth. I strode out of the room, my head held high, even as tears streamed down my face. I had lost my mother's quilt, my dignity, my faith in the man I loved. But I refused to lose myself. This was war, and I was ready to fight like hell. With shaking hands, I rifled through the drawers of Jackson's mahogany desk, my heart pounding in my ears. I needed proof of his infidelity, something tangible to use against him in the divorce proceedings. Beneath a stack of financial reports, I found it. A small, black velvet box. My stomach lurched as I flipped it open, revealing a stunning diamond bracelet. The kind of bracelet you give to a mistress, not a wife. I snapped a photo with my phone, then kept digging. Credit card statements, hotel receipts, email printouts, all painting a sordid picture of Jackson's extramarital activities. He had been lavishing Lily with gifts and clandestine getaways, all while treating me like a burden. Rage bubbled up inside me, hot and fierce. How dare he? How dare he betray me, humiliate me, make me feel like I was the problem when he was the one stepping out on our marriage? I thought back to all the times he had critiqued my appearance, making snide comments about my post-baby body, the way he would roll his eyes when I talked about my fashion blog, dismissing it as a silly hobby. He had chipped away at my self-esteem, piece by piece, until I barely recognized myself. But now I saw him for what he truly was. A manipulative, selfish bastard who cared only about his own pleasure and status. Well, I was done being his trophy wife, his arm candy, his doormat. I gathered up the evidence, stuffing it into my purse. Then I marched into the living room where Jackson was pouring himself a scotch, acting like he didn't have a care in the world. You son of a bitch, I said, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. How could you do this to me, to our family? He looked up, his expression a mix of annoyance and boredom. Do what, Camille? What are you babbling about now? I threw the credit card statements at his feet, watching as they fluttered to the ground. I know about Lily. I know you've been cheating on me. For a moment, he looked stunned. Then his face twisted into an ugly sneer. So what if I have? Can you blame me? Look at you, Camille. You let yourself go. You're not the woman I married. His words sliced through me like a knife, but I refused to let him see me crumble. Not anymore. No, I'm not, I said, my voice gaining strength. I'm better, because I'm done letting you treat me like garbage. I'm done being your wife, your punching bag, your fucking servant. I pulled out my phone, showing him the photo of the diamond bracelet. I wonder what the tabloids would make of this. The great Jackson Hawthorne caught showering his secretary with jewels while his wife raises his child. His face paled, his eyes darting to the phone. Camille, let's not be hasty. We can work this out. I can change, I swear. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. It's too late for that. I've already filed for divorce, and I'm going for full custody of Mia. You can't do that, he sputtered, his fists clenching. I won't let you take my daughter from me. You should have thought of that before you stuck your dick in your secretary, I spat. I'm done being your doormat, Jackson. I'm taking Mia, and I'm taking half of everything. You can rot in hell with your precious family for all I care. I turned to walk away, but his next words stopped me cold. You'll never make it on your own, he sneered. You're nothing without me, Camille. Just a washed-up wannabe designer with a stupid little blog. You need me. I whirled back around, getting right in his face. Watch me, I hissed. I'm going to build a life for myself and Mia, a better life than you ever gave us. And when I'm a success, when my designs are walking down runways and gracing magazine covers, I'll make sure the whole world knows the truth about you, about the kind of man you really are. With that, I stormed out of the penthouse. Mia clutched tightly in my arms. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I was never looking back. Jackson Hawthorne and his vicious family could burn in the hell they'd made for themselves. I was free, and I was ready to rise from the ashes, stronger than ever. Months had passed since I walked out on Jackson and his toxic family. Mia and I had settled into a small but cozy studio apartment, far from the glittering penthouse that had been our gilded cage. Money was tight, but we were making it work. I poured my heart into my fashion blog, determined to turn it into something more, a career, a future, a way out of the mess my life had become. I was just putting Mia down for a nap when a frantic knocking sounded at the door. Frowning, I tiptoed over and peeked through the peephole. My stomach dropped. Zara. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home. The last thing I needed was more drama from the Hawthorns. But something in Zara's expression, a desperate, haunted look I had never seen before, made me unlock the door. Zara? I said cautiously. What are you doing here? She pushed past me, her eyes wild. I didn't know where else to go, she said, her voice breaking. Everything's fallen apart, Camille. It's all gone to shit. I closed the door, my heart pounding. What are you talking about? What's happened? The story spilled out of her in fits and starts, each revelation more shocking than the last. After the divorce, Walter's shady business dealings had come to light. Embezzlement, fraud, money laundering. He had been running a criminal empire right under everyone's noses. The FBI had seized all their assets, leaving the family penniless and disgraced. Jackson, unable to cope with the shame and pressure, had turned to alcohol and gambling. He had blown through what little money they had left, racking up massive debts to some very dangerous people. Olivia, always so poised and put together, had suffered a nervous breakdown and was currently in a psychiatric ward. And Zara? She had been unceremoniously kicked out of her elite private school, her tuition left unpaid. She was broke, homeless, and utterly alone. I didn't know where else to turn, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I know I've been awful to you, Camille. I know I don't deserve your help, but I have nowhere else to go. I stared at her, conflicting emotions warring inside me. A part of me, the part that still stung from her cruelty, wanted to turn her away, to let her suffer the consequences of her actions. But another part, the part that knew how it felt to be lost and scared, couldn't bear to leave her on the streets. You can stay here, I said finally, my voice tight, for a little while, until you figure something out. Her shoulders sagged with relief, fresh tears spilling over. Thank you, she breathed. Thank you so much, Camille. I swear, I'll make it up to you. I'll be better, I promise. I held up a hand, cutting off her tearful rambling. Let's get one thing straight, Zara. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for Mia. She deserves to have her aunt in her life, even if that aunt is a spoiled brat who made my life hell. Zara flinched at my harsh words, but nodded. I understand, and I'm sorry, Camille, for everything. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I know, but sorry doesn't erase the past. If you're going to stay here, there will be rules, boundaries. You will treat me with respect, pull your weight around the apartment, and be a positive influence on Mia. If you can't do that, then there's the door. She nodded vigorously, her eyes wide. I will, I promise. I'll do whatever you say. Good, I said, my tone softening slightly. Then let's get you settled in. It's not much, but it's home. As I showed Zara to the pull-out couch that would be her bed, I couldn't help but marvel at the twists and turns life had taken. A year ago, I had been the one groveling at the Hawthorns' feet, desperate for scraps of their approval, Now they were the ones crawling to me for help. Their world shattered beyond repair. It was a bittersweet victory, one that tasted of ashes and regret. But as I watched Zara curl up on the couch, her face etched with gratitude and exhaustion, I knew I had made the right choice. Not for her, but for me. For the person I wanted to be, the person my mother had raised me to be. Someone who could find compassion, even in the face of cruelty. Someone who could rise above the pain and pettiness and choose to be better. Someone who could finally truly be free. Living with Zara was a test of my patience and resolve. Despite her tearful promises to change, old habits die hard. She was moody, entitled, and prone to lashing out when things didn't go her way. More than once I had to bite my tongue to keep from throwing her out on the street. But I persevered, for Mia's sake. My daughter had lost so much already. Her father, her grandparents, the only home she'd ever known. I couldn't bear to take her aunt away, too, no matter how difficult Zara made things. So I set clear boundaries, laying out the rules of the apartment in no uncertain terms. Zara was to clean up after herself, contribute to the household chores, and watch her language around Mia. If she couldn't follow those simple guidelines, she was welcome to leave. To my surprise, Zara actually made an effort. She tidied the living room without being asked, helped with the dishes, and even entertained Mia while I worked on my blog. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was progress. And my blog, it was finally taking off. My honest, raw posts about my divorce and starting over had struck a chord with readers. My follower count was skyrocketing, and I was getting more sponsored content offers than ever before. But the real game changer came in the form of an email from a major fashion magazine. They had stumbled across my blog and were impressed with my designs. They wanted to feature me in a multi-page spread, showcasing my work to the world. I stared at the email, my heart pounding. This was it. The big break I had been dreaming of. The chance to turn my passion into a real career. With shaking hands, I typed out a reply, accepting their offer. I knew I should be ecstatic, but a part of me was terrified. Putting myself out there, exposing my creations to the judgment of the fashion industry, it was a huge risk. If they hated my work, it could crush my dreams before they even had a chance to take flight. But I couldn't let fear hold me back. Not anymore. I had spent too long playing it safe, shrinking myself to fit into the mold of the perfect wife and mother. It was time to bet on myself, to chase my dreams with everything I had. I threw myself into preparing for the feature, stitching and sketching late into the night. Zara, to her credit, stepped up to help with Mia, keeping her occupied so I could work. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to me. As the date of the photo shoot approached, I could barely contain my excitement. This was really happening. I was going to be in a magazine, my designs splashed across glossy pages for all the world to see. I was so caught up in my own head, I almost didn't hear the knock at the door. Assuming it was the mailman, I swung it open without checking the peephole. My stomach dropped. There, standing in the dingy hallway of my apartment building, were the last people I ever expected to see. Jackson, Walter, and Olivia. My ex-husband and former in-laws, the people who had made my life a living hell. They looked haggard and worn, their designer clothes rumpled and stained. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and fear. Jackson stepped forward, his bloodshot eyes pleading. "Camille, we need your help. We have nowhere else to go." I wanted to slam the door in their faces, to tell them to go to hell and never come back. But before I could, Walter shouldered his way into the apartment, Olivia and Jackson close behind. "We're moving in," Walter announced, dropping his suitcase on the floor. "You have a spare room, don't you? It'll be just like old times." I stared at them, my mouth hanging open in shock. The audacity, the sheer nerve of these people. To show up at my door, expecting me to take them in after everything they had done. But as I looked at their desperate, defeated faces, I realized something. They had nothing left. No money, no status, no power. They were at rock bottom, just like I had been. And in that moment, I knew I had a choice to make. I could turn them away, leave them to fend for themselves on the streets, or I could be the bigger person, the person my mother had raised me to be. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Fine," I said, my voice hard. "You can stay, but we're doing this on my terms. And if you cross me, even once, You're gone. Understood? They nodded, relief etched on their faces. As they shuffled into the apartment, a sense of grim satisfaction settled over me. The Hawthorns had taken everything from me. My home, my marriage, my self-worth. But now the tables had turned. Now they were the ones at my mercy, and I was going to make damn sure they never forgot it. The Hawthorns settled into my apartment like a plague, infesting every corner with their toxic presence. They critiqued everything from the size of the rooms to the threadbare furnishings, making snide comments about how far I had fallen. I gritted my teeth and bore it, reminding myself that this was temporary. As soon as my feature launched, I would have the means to kick them out and never look back. But living with them was a nightmare. Walter and Olivia commandeered the bedroom, leaving Jackson to sleep on the couch. They treated my home like a hotel, expecting me to wait on them hand and foot. Olivia was the worst, constantly finding fault with my parenting and housekeeping. Really, Camille, she sniffed, eyeing the dishes in the sink. I thought you would have learned to keep a cleaner house by now. It's no wonder Jackson strayed. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. It took every ounce of willpower not to throw her designer luggage out the window. Jackson, for his part, mostly avoided me. He spent his days sulking around the apartment, drinking my cheap vodka and muttering about his fall from grace. I caught him eyeing Zara a few times, his gaze lingering on her developing curves. It made my skin crawl. But Zara surprised me. She stepped up in ways I never could have imagined, helping with Mia and standing up to Olivia's barbs. "Back off, Mom," she snapped one evening when Olivia started in on my cooking. "Camille's doing the best she can, which is more than I can say for you." Olivia's face turned an ugly shade of purple, but she shut her mouth. I shot Zara a grateful look, mouthing a silent, "Thank you." As the day of my big photo shoot approached, the tension in the apartment reached a boiling point. I was a bundle of nerves, triple-checking my designs and obsessing over every detail. "I don't know why you're bothering with this silly little hobby," Walter sneered, flipping through my sketches. "It's not like you have any real talent. You should be focusing on finding a rich husband to take care of you and Mia." I snatched the sketches back, my hands shaking with rage. "This is not a hobby," I said, my voice low and fierce. "This is my career, my passion, and I will not let you or anyone else diminish that." Walter scoffed, exchanging a knowing look with Olivia. "Career? Please. You're a washed-up housewife with delusions of grandeur. You'll never make it in the fashion world." I opened my mouth to retort, but Mia's cry from the bedroom cut me off. I shot Walter a venomous glare and hurried to comfort my daughter. As I rocked Mia back to sleep, I felt a surge of determination. I would show them. I would show everyone. I was more than just Jackson Hawthorne's ex-wife, more than a mother, more than a failed socialite. I was Camille Russo, a designer, a dreamer, a survivor. And I was going to take the fashion world by storm, no matter what it took. The morning of the shoot dawned bright and clear. I kissed Mia goodbye, leaving her in Zara's capable hands. Then I gathered up my designs and headed out the door, my heart pounding with excitement and nerves. But when I returned home that evening, flush with the success of the shoot, I found the apartment in chaos. Mia was crying, her little face streaked with tears. Zara was nowhere to be seen. And there, in the middle of the living room, were Walter and Olivia. They were surrounded by the tattered remains of my sketches and fabric samples, their faces twisted with malice. "What have you done?" I gasped, my voice barely above a whisper. Olivia smiled, a cruel, vicious thing. "We put an end to this foolish pipe dream of yours. Did you really think we would let you succeed? Let you humiliate us even further?" I stared at the ruins of my work, months of blood, sweat, and tears reduced to scraps. I wanted to scream, to rage, to fall to my knees and weep. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not in front of them. Not in front of Mia. So I did the only thing I could. I squared my shoulders, lifted my chin, and met their triumphant gazes with a steely one of my own. "Get out," I said, my voice calm and cold as ice. "Get out of my house and never come back. You have no power over me anymore." And with that, I took my daughter's hand and walked away, leaving the stunned Hawthorns in my wake. They had tried to break me, to crush my dreams and my spirit. But they had underestimated me. I was Camille Russo, and I would rise from the ashes of their cruelty, stronger and more determined than ever. This was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of grim determination. The Hawthorns had destroyed my designs, but they hadn't destroyed me. I would not let their cruelty derail my dreams. I got Mia ready for daycare, kissing her chubby cheeks and promising to be back soon. Then I headed out to meet with the magazine editor, praying that I could salvage something from this mess. But when I arrived at the office, my heart sank. The editor's face was tight with concern, her brow furrowed as she flipped through the tattered remains of my portfolio. "Camille," she said gently, "I'm so sorry, but we can't run the feature like this. The designs are ruined, and we go to print in less than a week. There's just no time to reshoot everything." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. This was my big break, my one shot at making it in the fashion world. And now, thanks to the Hawthorns, it was slipping through my fingers. But I refused to give up. "Not now, not ever. Please," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I can fix this. I can recreate the designs, work around the clock to make it happen. Just give me a chance." The editor hesitated, her eyes searching mine. "Okay," she said finally. "You have 48 hours. If you can deliver the designs by then, we'll run the feature. But Camille, this is your last chance. Don't let me down." I nodded, my throat tight with gratitude and determination. "I won't, I promise." I raced home, my mind already whirling with ideas. I would have to work nonstop, forgoing sleep and meals to make this happen, but I would do it. I had to. When I burst through the door of my apartment, however, I stopped short. The place was trashed, even worse than before. Furniture overturned, dishes smashed, clothes strewn everywhere. And there, in the middle of the chaos, was Zara. She was huddled on the floor, her knees drawn up to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "Zara?" I said softly, kneeling down beside her. "What happened? Where's Mia?" She looked up at me, her eyes haunted. "They took her," she whispered. "Mom and Dad, they came back after you left, demanding to see her. I tried to stop them, but they pushed past me. They said they were taking her away, that you were an unfit mother, that she belonged with them." My blood ran cold. They had taken my daughter. My sweet, innocent Mia, the one pure light in my life. I grabbed Zara by the shoulders, my fingers digging into her skin. "Where did they go? Tell me, Zara. Where did they take her?" She shook her head, fresh tears spilling over. "I don't know. They wouldn't say. But Camille, there's something else." She took a shuddering breath, her next words hitting me like a sledgehammer. "Jackson was with them. He helped them take her." I staggered back, my vision blurring. Jackson. My ex-husband, the father of my child. He had betrayed me in the deepest way possible, siding with his vicious family over his own daughter. But I didn't have time to process the pain, the anger, the sickening sense of betrayal. I had to find Mia. I had to get her back. I turned to Zara, my voice hard as steel. "Pack a bag. We're going to find them, and we're going to bring Mia home. And then—" I clenched my fists, my nails biting into my palms. "Then we're going to make them pay for what they've done." Zara nodded, a flicker of her old fire returning to her eyes. "I'm with you, Camille. No matter what it takes." We set out into the night, two women on a mission. I didn't know where the Hawthorns had gone or how we would find them, but I did know one thing. They had messed with the wrong mother, the wrong woman, and they were about to learn just how far I would go to protect what was mine. This wasn't just about my career anymore, or my pride, or even my revenge. This was about my daughter, my family, and heaven help anyone who stood in my way. It had been 5 years since that fateful night. 5 years since I had rescued Mia from the clutches of the Hawthorns and walked away from their toxic influence for good. In that time, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. My feature in the magazine had been a resounding success, launching my career as a sought-after designer. I had moved Mia and myself into a beautiful townhouse, far from the painful memories of our past. We were happy, healthy, and thriving. But I never forgot what the Hawthorns had done, the scars they had left on my soul. And as I watched their lives unravel from afar, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. Walter and Olivia, once the king and queen of high society, were now divorced and destitute. Walter had been arrested for his financial crimes, his reputation in tatters. Olivia, unable to cope with the shame and scandal, had fled to Europe, where she lived a lonely, bitter existence. Jackson, my charming ex-husband, had drowned in his own vices. His gambling debts had caught up with him, forcing him to sell off every last possession. Last I heard, he was living in a seedy motel room, drowning his sorrows in cheap whiskey. And then there was Zara, my former tormentor, the girl who had made my life a living hell. She had shown up at my door a few months ago, looking thin and haggard, her eyes haunted by the ghosts of her past. "Camille," she had whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I need you to know how sorry I am for everything." I had stared at her, this broken shell of a girl, and felt a flicker of pity. "I forgave you a long time ago, Zara," I said softly. "Not for your sake, but for mine. Holding on to that anger, that resentment, it was poisoning me from the inside out." She had nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I don't deserve your kindness, Camille, not after what I did. But I want you to know that I'm going to be better. I'm going to make something of myself, just like you did." I had smiled then, a genuine smile. "I know you will, Zara. You're a Hawthorne, after all, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that we're survivors." She had left then, her head held high, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. And as I watched her go, I realized that I had finally found the peace I had been searching for all these years. Not through revenge or spite or bitterness, but through forgiveness, through letting go of the past and embracing the future. I looked around my beautiful home, at the photos of Mia and I smiling and laughing, at the racks of clothing bearing my own label. I had built this life for myself, brick by brick, stitch by stitch, and I was proud of it. I thought back to that scared, broken woman I had been all those years ago, the one who had cowered in the shadow of the Hawthorns' cruelty. I barely recognized her now because I was no longer that woman. I was Camille Rousseau, fashion designer, mother, survivor, and I had risen from the ashes of my past like a phoenix, stronger and more radiant than ever before. As I sat down at my desk to sketch out my latest collection, I felt a sense of deep contentment wash over me. I had faced the demons of my past and emerged victorious. I had found my purpose, my passion, my true self, and nothing, not the Hawthorns, not the challenges of single motherhood, not the cutthroat world of fashion, could take that away from me. I was free. I was whole. I was finally truly happy. And as I lost myself in the flow of creation, the fabrics and colors swirling beneath my fingertips, I knew that this was just the beginning of my new life, my new story. A story of resilience, of redemption, of love, a story that was all my own.